Hello everyone, welcome back to /GameEV here with another video, and this is a kind of follow-up to my last Returnal review. So I'm still playing this game. It's got me by the hooks, honestly. And one of the things that I've now completed the story several times that I said I was going to do in my previous video was talk about the game in the story and go a bit into spoilers, but because it's very in-depth, I wanted to kind of go into it in stages. So this video is more about understanding the world, so how this works. How is Celine able to do what she does, the overall way on how she carries herself through the game, what are the time travel elements. So we're establishing the rules, I guess, for a better way of doing it. So off the back of my other video, Celine is an astronaut or scout, and she's been not sent, she's been called, I guess, to this planet to investigate this signal called the White Shadow, and it's this planet called Atropos, and she goes pretty much against her command to avoid coming over, but she comes anyway, and on entering the atmosphere she crash lands, right? So on crash landing she starts exploring, she survives the landing, the crash, I guess, and her ship has been destroyed and she's just stranded on this planet, and so she starts, I guess, scouting ahead, trying to find a way out, looking for a way to be rescued, I guess. And the first thing she notices is really early into the game, it kind of establishes the fact that there's something weird going on, because she finds another scout body on the floor, and when she turns the helmet to see the name of the scout that's dead on the floor, she realises it's got the same name as hers, Celine. So it doesn't make any sense to you, the player, or Celine, that for that matter. And very quickly start realising that when you die the first time, due to the difficulty of the game and you getting used to how the game kind of works, you pretty much loop back, and you're back at the crash moment where you're just crashing into the into the woods, and you pretty much start again with nothing. So every time you die, all your equipment, any new guns, anything you've collected in your first run, has disappeared, and it's like you've completely started a new event, like it's the first time again. Now, ultimately, when Celine first crash lands, she has no memory of ever being in that planet before, so that's, I think, an important fact to mention from the very beginning. Now, it doesn't really clarify, like, when she comes back again and again and again, like, I'm not sure if she's retaining memories. It feels like she is, but I also think that most of what she ends up retaining is due to the logs that she's collecting. Now, the rules of this game are very weird, because there is a time travel element, but whilst as far as the actual gameplay is concerned, because you retain nothing when you die, nothing that is important to you making your game easier, I guess, it's a bit strange that she ends up retaining some other items, like the scout logs from other Celines. So the story is delivered via scout logs. Every time she finds one, it's literally a recording of herself from another time that she landed on the planet and survived up to a certain point, and the scout logs are left on that Celine's death, so you get to listen to their final comments before they die, I guess, or whatever they had recorded during that sort of portion of their adventure. But they die, and you pick up the scout log, so you get to piece together what the other Celines were thinking at any given moment. There's a fair few scout logs, I want to say, is that they're like in their 30s or 40s, maybe more. So there's a lot of story that you end up piecing together just from listening to the scout logs. But I do find that because Celine is maybe she's not retaining memories. We are, the player is, but she isn't. Those scout logs are very unreliable, so I do think that Celine is literally an unreliable narrator of this story, which makes it more interesting, I guess, because you really don't know what to believe. You don't know how to take what's going on, which always puts you on edge. So just when you think you're understanding certain parts of this game and a bit of Celine's past, the game just throws you a loop. So to underline effectively how I think, because I think that it's very much open to interpretation. There isn't at the moment there is no confirmation from the developers what this story is or how it works, or how what the ending means. But so everyone is kind of just, from my researchers, just has an opinion on what they think has happened. There's a Greek mythology connection as well. So the names Selene, Helios, Atropos, Thea. So these are all the names of the bosses. They're all pretty much connected to the Greek mythology. So they have counterpart names. So Selene is goddess of the moon, I believe. And her brother is Helios, their mother is Thea. So these are all names from specific people from Greek mythology. But I'm going to say it from here on in that I don't think that the Greek mythology has any part to play in the actual story. I kind of feel like it's a red herring almost to put those names in there, because it makes you think, oh, maybe if I go research some Greek mythology events, literature, you'll find some sort of connection, you'll be able to understand what's happening here. But I don't think there might be some semblance, but I think it's you're clutching at straws if you think that by looking into the Greek mythology and the corresponding names that it's going to shed some light, if anything, because it really didn't, in my opinion anyway. So I'm taking away the Greek mythology out of the equation straight away. With the time travel element, now this is where I think this is the rules. This is what the rules that this world dictates of Selene and you as the player. So every time you die, my personal observation is everything resets back to zero, right? But not entirely. As I said before, she retains some items which are not kind of connected to the actual gameplay, but they're connected to the story, I guess. It kind of allows the player to keep track. So the Helios, the ship, keeps logs in its archive. There's things that developed in the ship. As every time you go back, you can go and check things that have developed in the ship that have been saved or recorded or unlocked, I guess. So that's one. So that gives you some indication that there is some continuity in certain thing, in part within the game, but in others, not so. It just resets to zero. So I think that Selene is almost a trigger event to how time works on this planet, because the bosses are also regenerate back up. So if you kill a boss, whilst the game gives you a different avenue, like a key to bypass that boss and go to the next biome or zone, the boss is still there, so you can go back and kill it. Also, to unlock more information about each boss, you have to kill it, or enemy, you have to just kill it repeatedly until you get 100% research on each boss, and you kind of unlock a bit more lore or some sort of cryptic understanding around them. So, which sometimes isn't really helpful to even read. Trust me, I've read a lot of it. But the fact that you retain some information leads me to believe that both Selene, and certain items and bosses and all that, they are like a trigger. They reset. Okay. But there are other elements, like the planet itself and the time on the planet is ever continue forward, and this I think is evidenced in the second half of the game. So I've done like a rudimentary drawing here to explain how I think what happens every time Celine dies. So what you're seeing really right here is the fact that when Celine crash lands, see all those lines going into Atropos, that's each time Celine crash lands on the planet. But they are literally events that tend to repeat itself every time she dies. But what I'm thinking is happening is because the bodies are left on the floor every time she dies, and she gets to see those bodies, that means time is present in the planet. That they're not resetting. So if it was time resetting itself, those bodies will all disappear. But they don't. They stay. What resets is the enemies, the bosses, and Celine herself. So that means she's ultimately creating a timeline every time she comes in. So she's going through time herself and starts the events again every time she crash lands, which doesn't override what happened before. It just adds to that event, so that all of a sudden there's multiple Celines in one timeline, right? So that's, I think, the rules that are being suggested here, is that every time she dies, she doesn't possibly remember the last time she was there. For her, the crash is happening again for a first time, but at the same time, later on, I think she does get to remember that she's been there before, and I think that just happens over time. So as she keeps dying and dying, she gets to like, oh, this time I'll do it. This time I'll do it. So you'll start getting commentary like that. Don't get how she retains her memories. Never explained, but ultimately she does eventually get there. So yeah, she dies. She creates a new Celine, and doesn't rewrite history. She just goes through it again, and in essence gets to see what happened to the previous Celines and where they ended up, how far did they get to in their journey, and ends up each one of those leaving logs and stuff to show their understanding of what happened in the story up to the point they died, because ultimately, you see, this is again very conflicting. Is if those Celines are dying, and she is retaining memories, how come she doesn't remember recording those logs? She finds them and she's surprised by what she hears half the time. So it's very conflicting to understand how time really works here. So I'm going to go with she dies and she doesn't remember. Ultimately, she gets the things she does remember is based on those logs that she's already collected. We'll go with that. So I think that establishes the rules of what happens when the whole time travel element with this game. That establishes what the rule is. The second part that I wanted to obviously cover in this video as well is the world of Atropos itself. So it's got lots of history, spanning thousands of years. There's we see history of a lost civilization, a sort of hive mind, alien race which pre-existed Celine's arrival. They've left a lot of ciphers and cryptic messages all over the planet, recording certain elements of what happened to everyone. You know, they all disappeared. There are some survivors that are still alive, but they don't really talk, and if anything, they just try to kill you every single minute they see you. If they're in essence, it feels like they're stuck in a loop. And there's like these glyphs, sort of almost like 3D holographics that tell stories. Just, you know, Celine goes into them, they formulate, and Celine kind of reads what she sees in some way. And they kind of also enhance a little bit the story, understanding what happened previously and the demise of the race that existed. The bosses are pretty much an extension of that race, and each one is where they are for a specific reason, I guess. One would say that I think they're there to actually stop Celine, and we'll dive a little bit more into that later on in the future video. But it's amazing because I think that it's insinuated that the fall of that alien race is actually down to possibly Celine herself. Now, if we're going to take that into consideration, Celine has been coming back to this planet for hundreds of thousands of years, right? And I guess that's another element to prove that time is continuous, because events do happen and they do stay recorded to the point where now we're traveling through a pretty much abandoned sort of area of the planet where there's no one around anymore apart from random enemies, but there's no more civilization, there's nothing like that. There is another event that happens midway through the game. So this is the part that really got me by surprise and got me gripped, because Celine gets to a point where she thinks she's done it. She's reached the White Shadow signal that's called her onto this planet. She's died many a times. She's gone through it. She deactivates the signal, and all of a sudden her message of rescue reaches Astra, who is the people she works for, and they come and rescue her. And so she leaves. You get a whole video of her leaving the planet and living, flashbacks of her just living a normal life, reaching old age, and I was blown away by it because of brilliant storytelling. She dies all the way to a point where you get a proper view of the camera from inside not a coffin but a hole in the ground, where she's literally about to be buried because she's lived a fulfilled life, up to her 60s or 70s or 80s, and she died an old lady, happy and married. But then as that sort of cutscene ends, she wakes up back in Atropos, and the cycle resets again. So she's gone through all that. She managed to get to the signal, she deactivated the signal, she got rescued, lived a full-on life, but yet the cycle continued. And by the time she gets back there, that second time round, after living all that life, so whatever 60 odd years have gone past, but whatnot, she's crashing, but ultimately not crashing. No, she arrives in, and the plane or the spaceship that she's arrived on is all decaying. It's been rusted. It's been there for years and years and years, which I guess makes sense, right? And the planet itself has changed. It's still the same as the first time when you land, but it's called a different name now for the sake of understanding that you're in the same place, but it's gone from the overgrown forest, I believe, to the echoing forest or something like that. But everything is overgrown and old and matured and different, more organic, like life has sprouted up in that forest more than it did before. And yeah, it just took me by surprise, and I'm like, wow, this is how you keep me gripped. I felt for Celine. We've been on an adventure. We've tried to get out of this planet. Effectively, we succeeded, and only for her to be thrust right back there after living a full life. Like it's like by dying and returning back to Atropos, it's like nothing ever happened. So yeah, it was a nuts experience, and the game continues from then. Like the second half of the game kicks in, and you're pretty much on a hunt for the main story ending. Okay, so I'm not going to get into it right now because I want to just focus on that portion, so the time travel thing and how it kind of works in this first video. So just to recap real quick, every time Celine dies, she returns to Atropos. She retains some items, which allows her, I guess, to retain some memory of her previous visits, but she doesn't remember ever being there and recording the logs that she picks up on her visits, right? So it's kind of confusing, but that's pretty much it. But ultimately, coming back every time doesn't mean that she's resetting time. It means that she's just coming back, but time on the planet is moving forward. It's moving forward, and her events or the things that she does whilst don't influence the bosses or the enemies, because they keep regenerating just as much as she does, they do influence her way to traverse through the world when she gets a key and retains it for future use to bypass the boss she just defeated. So so we have not so much time travel but more space travel, I guess. So she's traveling through space, and just the events are repeating themselves all in different orders every single time. That's basically what I've gathered up till now. So I'm going to do a bit more research, and I'm going to come back with a part 2 to this, which hopefully will dive a little bit further into Celine's past and story. Some of the cutscenes, which I think are really important to watch whilst I kind of go through it in my interpretation of each one. The dreaded astronaut, just putting it out there because it's brilliant. And also a little bit maybe of the sort of explanation behind each boss and what they are, what they mean. Maybe a brief description, just so we have a bit of context behind each one. Okay, so we'll leave it as that for now. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry, I don't really tend to script things because it doesn't come out naturally for me. I just feel like I can just expect to just talk about something when I'm excited about it, and my fresh interpretation of what Returnal is at this point. It's been a great experience. I'm still playing it, going for my platinum. Hopefully it won't be too much longer now. It's pretty time consuming, pretty tough, but it's been enjoyable as hell. So stick around. Hope you please like, share and subscribe to my channel. It's really important to me. It keeps me motivated to keep doing these videos because I really thoroughly enjoy them as well. I will see you guys on the next video. Ciao.